Here's another lick that I love. This is a Eric Harland lick that I first heard on a Jacky Terrason record called Smile. It's actually on the tune Smile, which is a pretty hip arrangement in 5/4. Toward the end of the song, it's a little bit of an open vamp, and they're all blowing, but it's a little bit more of a feature for Eric, and he just kind of plays this out of the blue. It's a really simple figure. It just has a ton of impact. So I want to break that phrase down, also talk about why it works, and then talk about where it comes from, because it doesn't come from that too far in the past, at least conceptually. So the phrase itself just consists of 3 beats. Usually we're going to end on the downbeat on the crash cymbal, so or the ride cymbal. So the first couple of strokes, this is simply just 2 triplets followed by a downbeat crash. So the sticking is all alternating. The first triplet is all on the floor tom, right, left, right, and then you simply move over to the snare drum for left, right, left, crash. So I'll do it in 4/4, even though he does it in 5/4. Very slowly. 1, 2, triplet, triplet, crash. Triplet, triplet, crash. Right, left, right, left, right, left, crash. Makes for a smooth transition that we start on the right on the floor tom. As we're moving toward our left, we start on the left on the snare drum, and as we move back toward our right, we end up on our right. So right, left, right. That's kind of the big motion. That's kind of the phrase, or that is the phrase. So it's a hip little phrase, but part of what makes it work is that it starts quietly, and it essentially turns into a crescendo, bang. So that last crash, the downbeat, has to have the most impact. And if you voice it to where the floor tom is a little quieter than the snare drum, and you turn it into this crescendo, it has a little bit more of a lasting impact than just digga bang. It doesn't have quite as much punch. It doesn't really pull you to the downbeat as much as if you kind of turn it into this crescendo, bang kind of a thing. So that's the phrase. It's by Eric Harland, and it's off of that Jacky Terrason record, Smile, off of the track Smile. However, I also want to talk a little bit about where that lick comes from. Eric, like myself, we're both huge Brian Blade fans, and I'm pretty sure he got this from some stuff that Brian plays quite a bit, which is Brian likes to do this move where we start low and go up high and end up on the snare drum or the crash cymbal. Obviously, conventionally, we're all pretty used to starting on the snare drum and working our way down. So bang. Well, Brian liked to go bang, like to go backwards, and it achieves a similar effect, but because it's kind of coming from the other way, it just has a really cool impact that's different from going down. A lot of times, going down has this feeling of decrescendo, bang. When ultimately, if we want to lead toward a big section or a big downbeat, it makes more sense to crescendo into that. And one thing that helps the sound of the crescendo is the pitches going upward versus the pitches going downward. So, and that's been around music forever. A lot of crescendos are written with ascending melodies, and decrescendos are often written with descending melodies. So why don't we do the same thing on the drums? That makes a lot of sense. So Brian has a couple of different versions of this phrase. He probably has tons of these, but some of the ones that I'm familiar with is one that goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. So it's going to start as a pickup on the end of 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and then he ends up with a crash with both the snare drum and the crash cymbal. So slowly, 1, 2, 3 and 2 and 3 and 4. So that's the phrase, and you can play that fast, you can play it slowly. And a similar thing in terms of the sticking, where we're going to start on a right, which he does as a pickup, and 2, and that allows our left hand to be free to go ahead and move to the rack tom. 3, and from there we then play a double where we or you'll play a double stop where both our hands play, and we shift there on 4 and 2 and ahem. So that's, you can tell how those phrases are similar. There are some other versions of that phrase as well. A good example of Brian playing the phrase is on a great Chris Potter record called Gratitude, and Brian's the drummer on that record. Check out a track called The Visitor, which is, for the most part, swing. And toward the middle there, in the middle of the tune, it turns into this vamp that Brian blows over. And somewhere in the middle, I don't remember exactly where in his solo, but if you check out The Visitor from Chris Potter, you'll hear it. At some point, he plays a version of that phrase, so that's a pretty clear version of it. I definitely have heard him play it live several times, and I'm pretty sure it's also on a Kenny Garrett record. But Chris Potter, Gratitude, the track is The Visitor. Check out Brian doing that. You'll notice the similarities in the licks. A few sticking things to work out, but I think if you follow a couple simple rules, you can find an easy way to play both of those phrases. And I think more importantly, if you use these kind of guidelines, you can come up with plenty of versions of these own phrases for yourself. So the idea is to make it turn into a crescendo. You want to help that crescendo by starting a little on the quiet side, and then you're working your way up. So the very loudest thing is that crash, either just a regular crash, or you can double it up on the snare drum. And also, you can start with the right, you move to the rack tom on your left, and then you either move back to the right, or even you can even work it out so that this is left. Most importantly, whatever direction you're heading is with the stick that you want to lead with. So if you want to go left, you might end up playing right, left, left. Or if you're going to go, like Eric's phrase goes right, left, right. So it starts on the right side. We move to the left, so our left plays first. We move back to the right, and our right plays first. I kind of came up with my own little version of this. I like the bang, the one that Brian plays a lot. And I also like the triplet version, bang, triplet one, that Eric plays. So sometimes at a medium tempo, I kind of combined those two ideas and came up with one that's triplet based, and it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. So I'm going to play a pickup on the end of 4 and triplet. My very last triplet, I'm going to double on the right. So for right, left, right, left, right, right, back. Then I also have one that goes. So the first one ends on 4, and 2, 3, 4, and triplet, 4. The second phrase doesn't require doubling. It doesn't require doubling the right. It just goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, and triplet. So the snare drum is going to end on 4, and then a crash on the end of 4 with the right hand. Bang. So those are two phrases that, as you can tell, are very similar to the Brian Blade phrase and the Eric Harland phrase. So that should give you guys a whole bunch of different ways to look at using that as a nice crescendo phrase for the end of some section, or for maybe the peak of some solo, either that you're playing or you're accompanying. So good luck messing around with that. Any questions or issues, just send me a comment or a message, and I'll see if I can't throw you some more stuff like this. Good luck.